Good morning, it's early April 2025, just up here on Ventnor Downs around the radar station. Having a quick look around, see if there's anything migrating bird-wise. There's a singing blackbird. It's about 7 a.m. This would make a great recording area for a bird observatory up on the summit of Ventnor Downs, as well as the undercliff below. St Catherine's Point would make another obvious possibility, but I do love Ventnor Downs. It does get a really high volume of common grounded kind of land bird migrants here. So at one stage I was thinking this would make a great bird observatory building, but unfortunately it was purchased. It's an old underground bunker system. It was purchased only for about 60 grand, I think, by a private individual and turned into a private residence, which is barely used as far as anyone can tell. So that's a shame, but that would have made a superb. It's even got a deck on the roof that they've converted into their kind of sun deck area that could have been a brilliant watch point. Just stand up there with cups of tea and coffee, watch the migrants going over. All those honey buzzards in autumn. But alas, that was not to be there, but it doesn't mean we can't create a bird observatory somewhere in the undercliff or around the undercliff, above it maybe, here on the Isle of Wight, and have this as one of the recording areas. You probably need several. You probably need a recording area here, fairly intensive, plus St Catherine's Point, probably St Lawrence as well in the undercliff halfway between Ventnor and St Catherine's Point. That would be ideal. So why would you have a bird observatory on the Isle of Wight? Well, it's right slap bang in the middle of the south coast. You've got Portland to the west, not very far to the west. And then the next observatory I think is Sandwich Bay. I know it's the grim one, Dungeness, and then Sandwich Bay in Kent. So you've got two quite close together in Kent, none in Sussex. The Isle of Wight would be just such a great area for a bird observatory, I think. Probably get away with having one in the undercliff area, or here around Ventnor Downs or St Catherine's Point, and then another one at the Needles. There's two mallard flying through there, probably going for that little dew pond over there, which I'm about to go over to, so I might disturb them. But yeah, so it's slap bang in the centre of the central south coast. An obvious gap in the bird observatory network. And because it's that much further east from Portland, but also because of the habitat, you've got this big area of chalk grassland and gravel-capped chalk heath, all owned by the National Trust on Ventnor Downs, which really holds the birds. You get really good numbers of redstarts and spotted flycatchers and whinchats. Lots of meadow pipits breeding here, and the visible migration is superb through the undercliff and up here on the downs. It becomes a very narrow kind of front, very narrow band of visible migration within the undercliff, where birds seem to be compressed as they go along the coastline, so it gives the impression of a really high volume of birds moving through. I mean, it is a really high volume of birds moving through. So really good for recording visible migration as well as grounded birds actually on the deck in places like this, and because the habitat's so good it holds the birds throughout the day as well. So whereas on Portland, quite often you get a flurry in the morning and then the rest of the day can be hard going, whereas here, often later in the day is the best, because a lot of the birds that have landed down in the undercliff below the downs move up onto the downs even in autumn. But yeah, the numbers of grounded land birds in the autumn here is just really, really good. Sorry, I'm walking into the sun. I'm going to walk back the other way in a second. But you've got this big compound area which is still fenced off, presumably for health and safety reasons, because there's loads of wartime bunkers underground here. Might still be an opportunity for an observatory within this area. What's that over there? Song thrush. Plenty of song thrushes up here. Owing to all the gorse, I think, and because it's chalk, there's lots and lots of food for them. The snails and slugs. Snails in particular. And it's really not that busy relative to Portland, which is swarming with people. This is more like Dungeness, which isn't. Although it's probably less busy than Dungeness even. Certainly less grim. So I do like Dungeness. Used to do a lot of birding there. It was a local patch briefly. But might be unique in being the only, if we had a bird observatory here, the only bird observatory on the chalk, on chalk downland on the coast. I think that's true. Obviously you've got Portland, which is limestone rather than chalk. No wood chats on the fence line. If I can focus through the fence, there we go. No serins on the gravelly edges to this car parking area. Nope. This is a CAA compound, Civil Aviation Authority, or NATS actually. Air Traffic Control, I think. There's not much parking up here, which is why you don't get many people up here particularly. I mean, it gets kind of busy, but just not really relative to other areas like Portland. Excuse my cough. Just going to walk through this kind of gravel capped, gorsey area. This is all, as I said, owned by the National Trust. This used to be arable a long, long time ago. Well, in the 90s, I think, the National Trust finally acquired it and reverted it to what's become kind of acid grassland, which will eventually be more heathy, I think, because the heather will eventually appear up on this. Doesn't seem to be much in the seed bank, but at the moment it's kind of, well, it's probably a mix of chalky and acidy, a bit like the Brex really, without the rare plants up on here because it was arable. Plenty of rare plants on the chalk grassland, and over there is it's chalk heath that was never ploughed up, so loads of heather. Let's see if there's anything around this little pond, this little dew pond. The mallards were attempting to land, but they've given up. No green sandpiper or anything. The old linnets like this pond to come and drink. Who knows what could be among them. It's good that it's got a little patch of gorse and some bramble around it as well to shelter little migrants that want to drop down and have a drink. Very nice. It's been barely any water at all this spring. It's been the driest March on record, I think. Yeah, it's still holding water. Could easily get a crake in the edge there, couldn't you? Can't see any crakes. So that alpine accentor that was at Black Gang day before yesterday was only there for a day. So it's probably somewhere else in the undercliff. It's only the second for the Isle of Wight, that alpine accentor. Yeah, tell me what you think in the comment section about a bird observatory. I think what you would do is have this as a recording area, St Catherine's Point as a recording area, St Lawrence as a recording area. There's some outreach, there's some more longer birding walks around the arable farmland just above the undercliff, and then you'd have a base. You probably wouldn't have accommodation because there's plenty of accommodation in the undercliff as it is, although there's no bunk style accommodation or cheaper accommodation as you've got at Portland. So eventually you'd have a base which might just be a home style converted garage or something for a warden, and then you'd promote surrounding or all sorts of accommodation in the undercliff as part of the bird observatory project. Get some sponsorship by doing that, and then you'd obviously promote cafes and restaurants and that, and that would be the base. You'd have your base and with a warden, and that person would be responsible for greeting people as visitors to the observatory, being nice like Martin is at Portland, Martin Cade. And then you'd have a team of, you'd probably have an assistant warden, I think. You'd have a team of volunteers looked after by the assistant warden who'd go out and do all the bird counts. Oh yeah, sorry, bird ringing as well would be the warden and assistant warden and a team of ringers who could come down to the ringing stations, of which you'd have several. Probably have one up here on Ventnor Downs, and then down in the undercliff in some of the wet areas, the willow beds and the reed beds down there, and St Catherine's Point as well. So you'd have ringing. Yeah, and the main activity would be just intensive monitoring of bird migration and breeding bird populations. Plenty of variety here on the south of the Isle of Wight. You've got mammals as well. You've got the red squirrels, loads and loads of dormice, and the eagles don't tend to come onto this southern or southeast coast of the island. Get them occasionally. They might start to explore this area more as the population builds up. There is a pair on the island, but just the one pair, and then there are other juveniles that have been released who come and go. Nice skylark there. Let's just double check it is a skylark. Yep. Very nice. Obviously one singing away above. There's the time. Time is 7:35 in the morning. There's Roxall copse just down there, which is an ash copse, ash woodland on the north slopes. I'm looking north at the moment, the camera. So that little ash wood is on the north slope of the downs. And the canopy of ash has largely died off, so the understory is thickening right up. You haven't got any deer here on the Isle of Wight, so you haven't got that heavy browsing pressure. So the regeneration in the woodlands underneath the dying off ash is pretty rapid and pretty thick. No nightingales, of course. Doesn't matter how much habitat we got on the island, which is plenty for nightingales, they still refuse to recolonise. There's a few around Newtown still, I think. Sure, the scientists will tell me why nightingale doesn't particularly colonise emerging thickets of kind of understory after the ash dieback. Something about being site faithful, presumably high site fidelity, philopatrwy. So the breeding adults go back to where they've bred before. They don't tend to colonise new habitat, presumably juveniles. There's lower site fidelity. So you think they might recolonise as red-backed shrike juveniles would do. Well, would do if there were enough of them. This is cracking shrike habitat. That's why I said earlier, where's the woodchat shrike? You'd expect woodchat here. I've still not found woodchat in the Undercliff or up on Ventnor Downs. Might pick that up on the microphone. There was a nice little rare bird singing just down on the slope there in the gorse. I'll let you see if you can hear what it was. What's that sat on the path ahead? It's another skylark. Skylarks and meadow pipits are doing pretty well. They like this open field. Just double check it is a skylark sat on the ground. In the sun, warming itself up. Sorry buddy, I'm going to just... there's one there as well. Hopefully you can hear that rather than the wind. So yeah, do tell me in the comment section whether you're a birder and you think a bird observatory on the Isle of Wight would be a good thing. And also subscribe to this channel if you want to hear about rewilding and wildlife-friendly farming and birding, nature books, self-publishing, that kind of stuff. So I've got several books coming out this summer 2025. I've published several books already within the last couple of years, but yeah, going to cover a lot of wildlife books, self or independent publishing on this channel going forward. So like I say, do subscribe, and also what really helps this channel is if you watch more of my videos. Watch time, the amount of time people stay on my little channel watching videos is really important, and I've got a lot of videos on this channel. Excuse my cough. And there's also a little super thanks button next to the like and dislike button below the video, where you can make a small donation to the channel, which is always much appreciated. I'm probably going to create a separate Isle of Wight Bird Observatory YouTube channel as well, just to promote that idea and see what people think. I've already created that, I just remembered, so I'll try and remember to put a link to it in the description below this video. Well, you'll find some other links. Look at that, what a beautiful scene. Not a cloud in the sky, not a bird in the sky, to be honest. Not much sign of any swallow movement or, any incoming hirundines. They'll be shooting through in this weather, probably quite high up. Don't know how well you can see the gorse. If you're watching on your TV, you probably see it pretty clearly. Let's zoom in. That beautiful yellow with bracken and bramble. It's where the wrynecks will be, especially in September, but August, September, we used to do coordinated flushing through, one day in the autumn or whatever, flushing through the older bracken on the slopes over there, and you'd flush. Well, I think one time we did it, there were 3 wrynecks, if I remember rightly. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure there were 2 or 3. I'm pretty sure it was 3. Pretty epic. So they're probably regular in the autumn in the gorse. Sorry, it's in the bracken amongst the gorse. That's what they really love, that combination. Right, I'm just going to walk up to the edge of Coombe Bottom. So like I say, we're on the acidy gravel cap at the moment. Just over here, we're walking south now towards the sea. Well, we're quite away from the sea. And it drops down quite steeply into Coombe Bottom, which is like our own Cornish valley on the south coast. Let's zoom back out again. That's better. Going to be walking back into the sun again in a second. This cracking weather just goes on and on. What's this we got here? The dunnocks. There's the sea, as you can see. It's a very warm sun for the first week in April. This is probably the second week of really warm, well, relatively warm weather. Bit of a chilly breeze, but just have a look down there. You can see Ventnor through the gap, just down there in the valley. Zoom in, can I? There we go. There's Ventnor. This is Coombe Bottom, this valley here. Not a very good view, it's slightly obscured, but it's a chalk downland valley. Get a better view along here, I think. Yes, this is a better view. There's the opening to the valley with the town, the lights of Ventnor below, and then the sea. So birds are drawn in by the lights of the town and then plonk down into this valley, which is chalk downland and shrubby areas, and there's a little copse down there as well, which usually gets yellow-browed warblers in the autumn. So if you fancy pioneering, coming birding in an area that doesn't get much cover, barely any at the moment, then come to the south coast of the Isle of Wight, around Ventnor, the Undercliff, St Catherine's Point. St Catherine's Point gets pretty good coverage by one or two very keen and very good birders, but Ventnor doesn't really. It's got a few birders living here, but people tend to head out to a place like Brading Marsh where the eagles hang out. You don't tend to get much coverage on Ventnor Downs these days. Used to get more. I think since the eagles have arrived, people have focused more on them really and where they get to. If there was a pair of eagles up here on Ventnor Downs, the coverage would be brilliant. Might have to do a crowdfunder to get a feasibility study done for this bird observatory idea. Look at how it can be funded and financed. Probably membership fees. Probably not accommodation initially. And sponsorships. Maybe one or two wealthy individuals. So one really good element of it that I would be very keen on is land acquisition, land purchase, as they're doing on Portland Bird Observatory. Buy up relatively small plots of land in the undercliff and on the arable above the undercliff to manage it for birds and for ringing, for wildlife. I'm going to go back into Ventnor, get a cup of coffee, but yeah, if you can think of any funding ideas, if you're watching this video and like the idea of a bird observatory here, do comment in the comments section. And let's drop down into Ventnor Bay, I think. Well, lovely, lovely weather. Not many migrants around today, a few willow warblers this morning around Salisbury Gardens and the Winter Gardens, which is where I'm at now. Not much else though to speak of. Looking a bit forlorn and derelict. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to go down and get a coffee at Bessie's and Spinky's, I think. Just down there, next to the paddling pool, which is empty. Little garden I've been looking after by Bessie's and Spinky's. Coming together, beginning to come together anyway. Need to get a lot more plants put in here this spring for the butterflies and such things. And that's where I'm going for a coffee. So I hope you're enjoying this video about Ventnor and the Undercliff. If so, then don't forget there are 2 books I've written. One, Bird Watching Around Ventnor, creatively named, and the second one is Wildlife Watching Around Ventnor. Just short books about the local area that are the subject of this video. Available on Amazon. I'll put a link below for this video, and you can also order it from the library. and it's available in all major bookshops, both of these little booklets, and in a few shops along the Esplanade, like the Longshoremen's Museum and Lady Scarlet's Tea Room as well. But yeah, I'll put a link to the description if you want a slightly deeper dive into the Isle of Wight Undercliff. Then these two little booklets might be of interest to you. Just go onto Amazon otherwise and just search for Steve Jones and Ventnor and you should find them.